Robert Clive, also known as Clive of India, led a remarkable life. Though he came from humble origins, he rose to prominence as one of the most influential figures in India during the 18th century. Clive's actions brought large parts of India under British rule, affecting the lives of billions of people. To many in Britain at the time, he was seen as a military genius and hero who fought corruption. But to others, both then and now, Clive exploited the Indian people and was corrupt himself. So what is the truth about this complicated man and his controversial legacy? Clive's story began right here in Britain as the eldest son of a modest gentry family. His parents could not afford to raise him, so he was sent to live with his aunt and uncle as a child. Young Robert struggled in school, showing little interest in academics and often getting into trouble. Some have accused him of extorting local businesses as a boy, but the evidence for this is sketchy at best. He may have simply been a naughty youth. At 18 years old, the restless Clive secured a post as a clerk with the East India Company. This marked the beginning of his eventual rise to prominence across the world in India. The company stationed him in Madras, where Clive quickly became dissatisfied with his monotonous clerical work. He quarreled with his colleagues and superiors regularly. Around this time in his life, he allegedly attempted suicide as well, overcome by depression. Clive's adventurous spirit soon led him to join the company's military forces instead. Despite having no prior military experience, he displayed natural leadership abilities. His courage under fire and tendency to take bold, unorthodox approaches during battles earned him promotions. Within just a few years, Clive found himself governor of a company settlement. His meteoric rise continued when the Nawab of Bengal, Siraj-ud-Daulah, attacked Calcutta and threatened British interests in the region. The East India Company called on Clive to defend its settlement. He sailed to Bengal with a small force and began plotting with dissident local bankers and courtiers to overthrow the harsh Nawab. Clive's troops faced the Nawab's vastly larger army at Plassey in 1757. Through clever tactics and betrayals from within the Nawab's ranks, Clive achieved a dramatic victory. After the Nawab was assassinated by his own uncle, Clive then placed this uncle on the throne as a puppet ruler. This marked the true beginning of Britain's ascendancy over the Bengal region. As the new governor of Bengal, Clive now had access to the riches of India's wealthiest province. He amassed a vast fortune by collecting war booty after his military wins, a common practice at the time. This personal wealth bolstered his political ambitions back in Britain. It also made the once struggling youth greedy for even more riches. Clive's first governorship of Bengal from 1757 to 1760 was a transitional period. The East India Company struggled to establish an orderly administration in its new territories. Clive did little to crack down on bribery and corruption amongst company officials during this time. He also accepted lavish gifts from Indian nobles himself, a precursor of the later rampant corruption. Nonetheless, the Bengal economy continued thriving under early company rule. With their monopoly over key Indian exports, the East India Company stimulated flourishing trade. And Clive established a new public-private administration, reforming the previous regime. Clive returned to Britain in 1760 a war hero and wealthy Nabob. He tried unsuccessfully to enter politics. So instead he lived a quiet life for several years and married Margaret Maskelyne, his devoted life partner. But instability plagued the company's new empire in Bengal during Clive's absence. Its exploitation and corruption alienated much of the population. And a massive famine devastated the region, killing 10 million people. So in 1764, the company again tapped Clive to save its faltering new domain. He returned as governor of Bengal once more and set about reforming the government. Clive eliminated the rampant private trade and bribe-taking amongst company agents. He also continued modernizing the administration along western lines. This crackdown stabilized the political situation greatly. But famine struck Bengal again in 1770, after Clive had departed. Over 10 million perished as the company's inexperienced new governor mishandled the crisis. Critics point to the famine as proof of the detrimental impact of Clive's conquest. Yet the economy and people of Bengal remained vulnerable to such disasters under native rule too. And the stability Clive achieved probably prevented an even worse outcome. Nonetheless, many in Britain blame Clive for the morally dubious practices of early company rule. He had to defend his conduct in extended hearings before Parliament in 1773. Clive insisted his ambition was tempered by restraint, arguing, "I am astonished at my own moderation." The committee ultimately exonerated him after months of questioning. Though not punished himself, Clive criticized the exploitative direction of the East India Company. He advocated for greater British government oversight of the private company. His suggestions influenced the Regulating Act of 1773, which reined in company corruption and established colonial administration in India. So in just 16 years, Clive rose from minor company clerk to de facto ruler of Britain's new Indian empire. He then left a lasting administrative legacy before retiring in Britain. But criticism of his enrichment through war and morally dubious government plagued him. Clive fell into depression again late in life as his military and political successes seemed unappreciated back home. His perceived slights by the ruling elite made the parvenu Clive bitter. At only 49 years old, he committed suicide by slitting his own throat with a penknife. This dramatic end codified the conflicting perceptions of Clive established during his lifetime. Many still herald Clive as the heroic founder of British India. They credit his political and military brilliance with gaining Britain an empire, while glossing over his greed and the oppression caused. But critics remember Clive as an unstable sociopath who stopped at nothing to enrich himself and Britain through conquest. They see Clive as an architect of imperialism who exploited the Indian populace. These opposing views endure in how we perceive Clive centuries after his death. Should he be honored as a brave pioneer and canny leader who transformed South Asia? Or was he truly a corrupt, unprincipled villain who harmed millions in his quest for power? The truth perhaps lies somewhere in between. For better or worse, Clive's shadow still hangs over India and Britain today. His life intertwined the histories of these two nations in ways that still provoke powerful reactions and shape perceptions. Clive's contentious legacy seems unlikely to be forgotten anytime soon.